Holy shit, it's going this whole time I was reading it. Okay. Okay, good to know, good to know, good to know. All right, well, I put up a playlist. I'm going to keep this Fire Talk thing going, so I'll put a link in also to the constant stream. Basically, it's like a TV channel, and I can go live anytime. And when people come in here, while I'm live, I can pull them up on the screen, which is cool because instead of people filling docs, you can say you want to go on the doc in the chat. And right. And I could pull you up. We can have people on and off. It'll be a way to help organize the chat. So I think that's great. So we're going to try this, and it publishes these things straight to YouTube, just so I can use it as a video recording tool as well. Seems pretty good quality. So far, so good. Firetalk.com. So I'll put the link. I'm not really sure what the link is to get to the live thing. And I've just put a video list I made years ago, and I sort of add to every once in a while of videos of mine that I like that I wanted to burn onto a DVD. But DVD, that's never going to happen. DVDs, what are those? I probably should burn them on a USB stick. This is actually a little app that I'd like to make, and I know how to make it. That would you just put in a playlist, and it would download all of those. And I was going to have it burn a DVD, but right now all it has to do is download all of those. You put it on a thumb drive. Okay, I want to talk about this term regressive and the concept of that's being conveyed there. So I'm going to start off with the sympathetic view here of I think I know who you're trying to talk about, regressives, but there's some confusion there. I think you guys are talking about fake progressives, like, for example, it seems like Sargon is always about his people that are still bringing up race. So the idea is that race isn't really a problem, or even if it is, not in the way these people are bringing it up. They're trying to bring us back. They keep talking to us like it's the 50s, and we have these gross attitudes when really it's the 21st century. And if we have any attitudes at all that need commenting on, they're not the ones from the 50s. So these people are the regressive ones. So I get that. That's my most sympathetic understanding of why that term is being used. But I do think, furthermore, there is truth in there being fake progressives, and that there's a regressive aspect to that. But before I go into that, I want to talk about what it means to call someone regressive from within the more left progressive viewpoint. For example, if a guy believed that women really should just be quiet and in the kitchen and pregnant, and that's just what he believed really strongly, well, that would be considered and called regressive, because he's trying to take a view that is on the tail end of the bell curve here now. People don't really believe that. The mainstream doesn't believe that anymore. So it's regressive to have that view. And in some more metaphorical sense, it's because, well, if you convince people to agree with you, then that bell curve would regress. That's rhetorical, though, because that's not really what makes the bell curve move one way or another, as far as we know. Right. So these fake progressives, though, that you might call regressive, I think mostly you call them regressive just because, like, well, they call themselves progressive, I'll call them the opposite. But to the degree that there's a grain of legitimacy in the concept, I think we're talking about fake progressives. So there's various reasons people could fake being liberal progressive. I consider myself a progressive libertarian. So progressive meaning, yeah, literally there is a philosophy in the world that you can make progress, and there's other philosophies like Buddhism that say, no, you just go in a circle, and anything you think is progress is an illusion of where things are going and what your value system is. For someone else, it could be regress or whatever they say in the end. I don't believe that. I'm Westerner. I believe in progress, and I believe in libertarianism in its truest or most, you know, etymological sense, or entomological, uh, that about personal liberty. I don't think personal liberty is something that really exists in the state of nature. When human beings 100,000 years ago are in tiny villages, I don't feel that that is liberty. Other animals that are truly more solitary when they're on their own, bears and stuff, um, they have a tremendous amount of technical liberty by our measures, but that's just how our measures don't really work. It's because our measuring of liberty is a little bit broken because the weather and lack of certain infrastructure is a comparative lack of liberty. So, for example, with humans, we have the ability to go anywhere in the world, or to walk on a public road hundreds of miles, even if we can't afford the plane ticket to go anywhere in the world. And that's liberty. The ability to move to a new location is the freedom to move to a new location. I'm for maximizing that kind of individual liberty. I'm progressive because I believe that we can progress. And why I support so many liberal policies is because I believe they're necessary to liberty. I think a large society is able to enhance liberty compared to a village-sized society. So reasons that people become fake progressives and don't have the progressive ideals, either the ones I just said, or there's other spectrums, other schools of thought, and maybe there's whole schools that are dominated by fakes. Probably there'd be some percentage of people genuinely there just fooled by it. Certainly there's some schools you could consider entirely fakes, but taking all the schools of progressivism or any social justice activism, there will be fake progressives in there. One reason is socializing. If you're in an area where it's popular, I went to Berkeley in the late 80s, and the quickest way to seem cool in high school students thinking, hey, I get another chance to be a new kind of person. So many people think that. I always thought that was funny when I encountered that. Because I'd gone to new schools. I'd gone to 2 schools every year most of my elementary and middle school years. And so, I know what it's like to be the new person and have a chance to reinvent yourself, and basically you just get tired. It's like, why invent yourself at all? Just be yourself. And it's like, oh, because then not as many girls would like you, or blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, but the 1 to 5 to whatever that do like you, it won't end up as a bad experience. So it works out. The math works out. The more careful you are looking, then the slower you are finding. Duh. Okay. Anyway, and the better thing you find also is a part of that duh there. So just purely socializing. When I was at Berkeley and a liberal, I criticized and got in big arguments with a lot of the protesters for taking a socializing approach rather than an analytic political approach, and the fact that they didn't really know why they were out there, which interfered with actually accomplishing the goals, because their goals were just to be there with all the other people that they'd heard were going to be there. And it's like, so this kind of fake progressive, I've always considered a problem for me as a real progressive. I'm looking over here. There's the camera, trying to look at the camera, but there's the camera. Okay. Another reason that you get fake progressives, and this is a serious political thing, it's just ambition. So, for example, I could give you an example. There's a guy in Ed Case who's related to the guy that started AOL, the other Case guy. Anyway, trivia. And he's pretty much a Republican or conservative, blue dog, Southern Democrat or something, and a Midwest Democrat at the most. And it was inevitable he would become a Democrat because he's from Hawaii, and in Hawaii, the Democratic Party has controlled for 50, 60 years, basically the whole history of Hawaii controlled by the Democratic Party machine. So if you're ambitious and you grow up thinking you want to get in politics and you're from a rich family in Hawaii, Kauai, I think they own a lot of Kauai. Of course, you become in the Democratic Party. This is one of the ways that movements become corrupted, and that indeed any successful movement will be corrupted, and to the degree that it's successful, will be corrupted to a related proportional degree. So this is me meeting you halfway, by the way, so I would like some reciprocal on this. Now, the other reason, and we see this in some cases, I hate to name names, but certainly on YouTube we see this a lot, that fake progressives can also be just confused people. They don't realize they're violating their own, the ideals they appear to be promoting, or when they repeat some phrases that sound like what, like they share philosophy with someone else, what that other person believes, they're confused about. Or just in general, people with prone to a victim mentality, or as I like to say, mentology. And in general, that would, let's just say broadly, without, not that it is this broad, but rather than narrow it down, personality disorders or personality tendencies on the borderline of a disorder, or even just healthy personality tendencies can lead to a victim mentality in some cases, which can lead to adopting the language of fighting injustice, right? And this can be because these people really are victims in some way, maybe psychologically in their family, or maybe they again have a personality disorder, a brain chemistry issue, and can become confused. I've noticed and I've said this many times for years and years on YouTube, many people in activism do have issues, and I thought about this for years, and why is this? And there's a couple reasons I'll go through. They're not on my notes, but off the top of my head, because I've given this a lot of thought. But one, obviously, activism attracts people with access to grind, right? People with access to grind. So, for example, Cindy Sheehan, was conservative enough, but when her son died in Iraq, it got her thinking, and that's legit. That's Mothers Against Drunk Driving had a lot of people who had lost children to drunk drivers supporting it and involved with it. And those kinds of things lead you to PTSD, disorder-ish or borderline to disorder kind of behavior, but possibly in a justified way. That doesn't mean that the behavior doesn't go beyond that into an unjustified way. Like, I feel Nader is that way. Nader to me is more like a crazy person. He's had some good ideas on the way of just wanting to push whatever. He has a personality issue driving what he's done, which doesn't mean that his activism hasn't been useful. Because if somebody's just born to grind axes, they might find a good axe to grind, right? They might go find an issue where there really is an injustice because they're the kind of person that just wants to, reveal injustice. And those kind of people become cops too, and detectives. So, it's like, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is why you're prone to some more psychologically motivated or flavored behavior up to the personality disorder. Also because some of those experiences will have actually given you PTSD or some other type of a mental disorder. And then of course you have people that have mental issues or just don't fit in the outcasts of society, which is a lot of mental health issues, but also just independent types of people on both wings, basically, of sanity. The super sane are in there with the outcasts, as well as the, schizophrenic, and nobody ever gave a damn enough to get them the help that they needed. And you've got those people are outcast, so they become experts at criticizing the mainstream. The mainstream, you guys have done shit tons of crimes. The misdemeanors aren't even worth mentioning. As outcasts and people who are in the wings here, with less regular, less typical personality and mental metabolisms, they're attracted as well. So you'll find those guys. And again, this is evident on YouTube. So I could have started with this, but just to sum it up. So for example, what I'm saying here is that feminazi, I believe it's, okay, that's a term that Rush Limbaugh invented. When Rush Limbaugh, as far as I know, popularized at least, when he invented that, that's fine. There might be feminists that think like Nazis, or Nazis that were feminists, both. But he didn't really go out of his way to make a distinction between the feminazi and any other kind of feminist. And indeed, because he didn't want to, he would like to blur any distinction if it was even possible and say all feminists are this way. Now, when we were talking about SJWs, many people were like, oh, but it's just an aspersion. You shouldn't necessarily take it personally unless you are that way. I've heard people talk that way about the word nigger as well, that well, unless you're this kind of person, it's just a particular kind of black person. Even a white person could be that. And unless you are that way, what's the offense? Yeah. That's just not how I think about that kind of thing. Now, if you want to convince me that the fake progressives are being identified as regressives and that's the purpose, you'll have to show me that you respect the distinction. I want to hear you name some non-regressive activists, some non-regressive people working for social justice. I brought up Malala many times, and none of you have taken the chance to praise her. That was supposed to be an easy, like I'm setting up T-ball for you. But on the contrary, many people say and continue to forget and say, oh, feminism has no use anywhere, even after they've admitted that it might have a use in my Saudi Arabia example. And then other people have said, well, no, you should just be for all human rights. Look, when somebody's stealing from the convenience mart, you can't just say all crime is wrong, all stealing is wrong. No, you go there and say, look, this stealing was wrong. You are therefore under arrest, right? So so feminism is about going, this particular kind of injustice that is based on your gender is wrong. And yeah, it does go both ways. And I've made that perfectly clear as well, that I entirely accept that there's a men's rights activism, but it's not like it has been ignored. We just didn't call it that. Labor rights is both, but with men in very dangerous jobs. Historically, labor movement is largely covering men's issues, but it's not. It's both. It's gender both, but with a big weight on the men's labor movement dominates. I don't know if dominate's the right word. I mean, just because there's some incredible labor history around female workers, so I want to acknowledge that. But peace activism, certainly the people protesting it, feminists are always at the anti-war protests ever since Vietnam, at least, and I think forever. But mostly men die, so the cost of war in that sense is a lot on men, at least on the aggressor nation, because of course on the other side a lot more civilians die. Anyway, I'd really appreciate an answer of a similar, without being frantic or anything, just going of halfway. I mean, I understand. I think I have an idea, and I've tried to describe it to you of what this regressive left is like, why they might be called that way, and I'll just finish up with my own sort of synthesis, which is, I think what's regressive about the fake progressive generally is that they're not they're dogmatic, right? And they're very group thinker. They don't think for themselves. Now, when I was young, I was introduced to a kind of a leftism that was individualistic and libertarian, and I thought that was liberalism. And I still think that liberalism is mischaracterizes entirely like a big government thing. But there's certain people that do believe that form of liberalism, and I think sometimes it's because they're being fake. You know, they want to do the right thing, and they've been fooled into thinking that that kind of liberalism is the right thing. But I think the true kind of liberalism is libertarian, individual liberty. We want people to have as much freedom as possible. If they like going in the hills, they should be able to go take walks in the hills. They need a little vacation to feel free. Fine, they need a productive way to contribute so that they can make a living. That should be as easy to get as their skills are appropriate. For example, if you know how to be a doctor, there should be some place for you to go to be a doctor. And I'm sure we can arrange those kinds of things. And I would like you guys to try to meet me halfway and tell me, did I get it right? Do you understand the reasons people become fake progressives and the reason that I need a distinction? I want to hear it, because if you're going to say that all activists are really feminazi regressive leftists, then yeah, it's just your latest feminazi term. Woot woot. We get these all the time. So cheers, you guys. And watch the TV channel. It's going to have a bunch of old videos on it. And I will, it's called Illusions Exist, and I will sort in other people's videos. So if you guys take part and you propose videos, the earliest, the better. You can put any YouTube video on a playlist. So any of our videos from the community that's been talking for various years now, or videos you're interested in. I was thinking of putting up some Susskind videos, hi Day. And if there's any particular conversations, I'm willing to put in some work to having it set up so that, like we could have on Thursday some classic debate between Thou Art That and in Mendham or whatever. Okay, sounds exciting, right? Okay, bye. I'm going to do it though, this because I don't have to write the software for this. So this is software I've been wanting to write, and these guys seem to have done it pretty good as far as I can tell. So yeah, if you want to check it out, it's called Fire Talk, and it's not costly. It didn't even ask. It didn't even try to get me to upsell. So I don't know if they're going to, it's in beta now, so they might start charging. But if it works this good, I'd pay. Okay, cheers.